Welcome to Wintentional Live. I am Olivia Denton Thomas, the brand counselor, helping you go from hustling to wholeness. And I am here with the lovely, the legal diva, Miss Tony Moore Esquire, my girl. I'm pretty sure if you are here for the third time, you are acquainted with us. We are having very candid conversations about what it means to own your brand. And also how it gives you space to grow in a way that makes sense for you. So today, we are talking about how structure is not a cage. Structure actually keeps you more protected and makes it so that you can continue to grow in a way that feels real and sustainable for you. So, you know, Tony, I see a lot of founders who are kind of like running from the legal structures. They're kind of avoiding them, the detailed operating agreements, the legal structures, because they feel kind of like boxed in. Um, but so, how does that lack of structure actually create the cage that they're trying to prevent?
It's weird because it really depends on where they are.
Mhm,
Sometimes they have the hustlepreneur mentality and they go from
mhm,
hustlepreneur to hustling solopreneur, and really all they have is busy work.
mhm,
So it's with regards to it, and sometimes people slide right under the radar. Like you're not you're not so big that you make waves,
mhm,
or you're not so big that when the compliance officers or the regulators or the Department of Labor's or the SEC comes looking for the bad actors, you're not that big with regards to it.
mhm,
But without that structure, you're not even big enough for procurement because they're going to be looking for certain things with regards to when they are partnering with you. Like people don't
yeah,
think of partnering, but I'm like, if you're going to be partnering for millions, you got to have some level of structure. They got to know that you're in compliance because they bring you into their ecosystem. You bring somebody into your ecosystem, you're pretty much like, okay, at least we check the boxes and they have a foundation. We check the boxes and they have operating agreement. We check the boxes and they understand that they have to file their taxes because we either saw a Schedule C or an 1120
mhm,
structure, the structures for success. Without that information, then kind of like what I was talking when I was doing my nonprofit mentorship this afternoon is like, you got to think of it like a business. And if you act like a business, walk like a business, talk like a business, people will treat you like a business. And that's where the structures come into play. So it's interesting that with regards to, I don't know too many people who
mhm,
don't appreciate the structure only because I have purposefully avoided individuals who have hustle mentality or hustle breath.
yeah,
And I work with individuals more who are usually multifaceted in the nonprofit and the for-profit lane.
mhm,
So they already know that they need that structure because they already know when they raise their hand to partner for the millions that their other partner on the other side is going to be looking for that as well.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a real thing.
Mhm.
What are some things that you think people, these aren't your people obviously, but what are some things that you think people tend to overlook? Like what should they be thinking about as they are moving from hustlepreneur into CEO mode?
Mm. Is with regards to it, it's just my thinking is once again, it's kind of hard for me because of the fact that I have intentionally and purposefully, like if
Mhm,
allow myself to fish only in the places that one respect legal, and fish only in the places that are building generational wealth, fishing in the places that is passing on a legacy of love and not liability.
mm,
So when you are already doing that, you have some level of structure because when you're passing something on, you've
yeah,
already molded and shaped it into something. Now I'm getting to the point where I'm now getting, the older I get, the more I'm like, hey, Crystal, I'm molding and shaping it into a business that you can buy or you can sell or you can transfer it to a family trust.
yeah,
And with that, you have to identify that you are passing something on, not not just documentation that you got off the internet, or
Yeah.
just a business that you are going to try to not pay taxes on. But
Yeah.
when you are creating a business where you're like, at this point, girl, we can talk about this because, structure, one of my new structures is my prayer life. And now this morning I had the best prayer ever. I said, Lord, make me rich. Not just rich in money. Because some people are like, oh, you already know. I need rich in money. I need rich in increase. I
Mm.
need rich in strategy. I need rich in ambiance and with power partners and power players. You see how I'm structuring my prayer? Because sometimes we just throw it out in the atmosphere. And my thing is, when we're casual with what we're bringing to the table, then it becomes a casualty of that casualness. But when we have that structure and we understand and appreciate that, guess what? We've already been molded and shaped. Somebody told me about grace is sufficient because he's already outlined a blueprint of what is already in place. What he said when he planned and purposed and breathed into me, he had structure. He's like, she's going to, I don't know all of that. The beautiful thing about life is I get a chance to feel my way through, you
Mm.
know, and appreciate certain things. It's like, you went too far. Certain things, no, you didn't get up. Certain things you was playing, you playing like as a poor person, And I was just talking to someone who identified, yeah, Crystal, rich, rich, rich. It was like, she was like, Tone, you gotta stop begrudging small beginnings. I said, I'm not begrudging that I was a foster kid. I'm not begrudging that I used to sleep in people's basements. I'm not begrudging that I used to be abused and sexually abused. And you know what I mean? I'm not begrudging that. I'm just acknowledging that God just brought me here and
Mm.
pretty much came from brokey broke. But each time I got a chance at each level, I learned something new. And now in my almost mid 50s, almost mid 50s, I'm just like, nah. At this point, for me, the structure I need is a book I'm reading, and
Ooh.
it's it's called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits.
All right.
It's an
Let me put
old
it on
book,
my list.
Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, because what this mastering of the Rockefeller habits, they didn't teach me that in the hood. When you have no structure, you're scattered. You're scattered in your thoughts, you're scattered in your behavior, you're scattered with your money. But when you
Mm.
appreciate that, you know what? I'm molding, I'm shaping, I'm building, I need a blueprint. So you got to structure your day, structure your mouth, structure how you do anything is how you do everything, even on the legal side. And people are like, oh, lawyers only talk legal. I talk legal because I look at business as a game. I talk legal because I do compliance, and I do compliance at a higher level. And so I know that as we rise, they will scrutinize.
Mm.
And when you raise your hand and say, I want an investor, I want investment, or we want to, this new administration is going after a lot of stuff that civil rights have at least paved the way at breadcrumbs. They snatching away breadcrumbs. But if we are going to file suit for reverse discrimination, we need some level of structure. We need receipts. We can't just have emotions. We have to establish, and it's called proof.
Yeah.
Even when I was a litigator, we still needed proof. We always looked at, okay, these are the issues and this is the rules. Now, how am I going to apply what you brought to the table to the law at hand so we can get a conclusion of a win?
Mm.
Structure.
I love it. I love it. And even you mentioning that book, I just looked it up and it says one of the clear tenets here is to make sure that everyone in the company can articulate what the company is about so that the strategy is based off of the company, what it really should do and not just borrowing from other people. Yeah, yeah. I'm going to lean into that book. Thank you. I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate it always. Um, I love that because everything you're saying really is about making sure that things are transferable. That's what I'm hearing. So
Yes.
it's not even just like holding it tightly in your hand, but making sure that, whether it's transferable to a partner or to the government through taxation or compliance, um, everything is actually in order, so that there aren't really any questions about, like, well, what happens next, or what's like required
Yeah.
of the individual or the business.
Yeah, especially with regard, if we truly, like, I was talking to someone and they were like, they were able to repeat at rote, yes, a business is a class, is an asset. It's only an asset if it's making money. It's
Mm,
only an asset if it's structured correctly. It's only an asset if it's worth something. It's only an asset if you can be like, okay, well, here's the numbers, EBITDA. You know what I mean? The earnings before the income, the taxes, the depreciation and appreciation. You know what I mean? With
yeah,
regards to it. But if you have no structure, if you're not capturing the numbers until the end of the year, then you miss out on so much golden opportunity.
yeah,
Because sometimes you can be like, you know, oh, I made too much, I'm a slow down, or I made too much, I'm going to invest, because you have that structure. Now, on the solopreneur side on internet, they talk about funnels. Well, I want you to start thinking about, this is my money, and how am I going to funnel the money I earn into my ecosystem, so
mm,
that I'm reducing debt, my ecosystem. So I'm putting some away for later. The younger you are for retirement planning, the better, because you have that compounded interest. You don't want to be like some of my clients back in the day at 67 talking
mm,
about, my child is about to graduate from high school and I got to start looking at retirement, because now you're self-insuring yourself,
oh, wow.
and that's really hard. You end up consuming all of the money. That's why I don't necessarily even do estate planning. I tell people
Mhm,
I'm a legacy building architect. Okay. I'm not just doing a will, because to me, a will is at the end of your life. Of
mm,
course, you put
mhm,
things in place, but okay, so what business are you going to focus on? What structure? Yeah, legacy building structure. You have a holding company to hold your assets, operating company to operate and to collect assets. Then you have some licensing frameworks, and then you have, identifying all the different affiliates and passive income, identifying what type of assets are you going to have, what are you going to do with real estate property and intellectual property, how you're building it out, and
mm,
more importantly, also training up your children and elevating the bloodline. See, most of the time, because on the probate side, most of the time people inherit all of the things that you brought together, but
mhm.
without structure, they just got paperwork.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, pretty much. One of the things I've been thinking about more and more, especially as I'm looking at businesses around me that are growing and thinking, a little bit bigger, is governance.
Mhm.
Now we're talking about governance, right? And it, in the long run, what I'm understanding about it from the positions that I'm in now, is it's much more about decision making logic, um,
Mhm.
than anything else. So, like, how does a legally sound, like, governance structure protect the founder? Um, in the long run, especially as their company is growing, like they're going bigger.
Well, it really depends on how it's set up. Because
Okay.
sometimes bigger means that maybe you have bringing in partners, and as you're
Okay.
bringing in partners, in exchange for money, there's an equity exchange, an equitable exchange. And what does that
Mhm.
look like? Sometimes people have structures in place with regards to um, having board members,
Mhm.
and sometimes those board members don't like you. And what does that look like with regards to protecting? So the governance is really a rule. On the corporate side, the governance is what we call bylaws
Mhm.
and policies, not
Mhm.
just bylaws, but policies too. Sometimes people lump it in because they don't know and they don't seek to know, with regards to like how best to set this up. And unless they're in the nonprofit sector and they're starting to build and they're starting to partner with individuals who command more. Like
Mhm.
when I started out, it was like, come what may, whatever showed up at the door, I served them. I was so bad with the service I was even doing. bankruptcies. This is way, way back in the day. You know what I mean? And then ended up on the debtor matrix, the creditor's matrix, because, they promised that they were going to pay me before, I filed their bankruptcy. But then they were so desperate and I didn't want them to lose anything. But the things I used to do, I don't do anymore. I put structures in place. I put a black book in place that said, no. You pay me, don't play me, And sometimes people do end up on the other side where I have to remind them, you know what I mean? But then I slow walk everything else until I get paid. Structure. Even with regards to governance, I always started recently just thinking of it like, okay, well, think about this, Tony. It's more like having a playbook. If I enter in, if I engage, if I'm going to partner with Olivia, this is what I'm willing to do. And I'm going to see what she's willing to do. And then we set the parameters of how we're going to play and how we're going to build on whatever service we decide to do. And structure in place with regards to intellectual property created and what I'm going to reserve for myself and what I'm also going to now utilize to play as, as both of us create and build, that type of stuff. So when you're thinking about, as I always talk about how business is a game. And so I don't know too many people who play a game and they want to lose. I doubt even the Sixers, they probably didn't want to get full sweat, but I digress.
Man, please.
And
here we are. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And here we are, Philly. Here we are. You brought up a really good point about bylaws and policies and how people kind of use them interchangeably. So like, what is I know bylaws are on the governance side and policies are on the operations side. So like, hey, why do people do that? And also, what is the line between them really? So people know where to put what.
Well, I mean, there's so many different schools of law, you know what I mean? But the school of Tony Moore is more like bylaws are more the governance. So are we going to have a fiscal year? Are we going to have, calendar year? Governance. How do I get rid of somebody who needs to get got? You know what I mean? Governance. Is there indemnification? Is there not indemnification? Governance. How many terms and how many years and how many players and in the boardroom, how many people can actually speak up? Governance. If you are going to be a good board member, what does that look like? If you're going to be a president, what does that look like? And when I was coming up in the law, I always thought about governance. They talk about the Constitution. The Constitution had those governance that aren't technically supposed to be changed, and they shouldn't even be indoctrinated with politics or politricians. But, I digress. But still, governance. Whereas policies are more like executive orders. Okay. And be here today, gone tomorrow. Okay. You know what I mean? But in an ideal situation, it's supposed to, help and assist with policing of activities of individuals. Here's the policy. Can we have board members to work for the nonprofit or not? Here's the policy. Can we have, can we buy a rental space or not? And if we do, then what does that look like? And the policies police the actions so that it's not discretionary based on come what may. Whosoever will is making that decision, because in the end, it's still a business ecosystem, a business entity. And you don't want indemnity within the entity. So you set parameters and guidelines and policies in place. And I always say, please police with policies with regards to it, especially if it's a question that repeatedly comes up. Well, is there a policy? Like one of my clients, she has sponsorships with big, huge companies, and they had policies on how you can use their trademarks. You can do it this way, and this is our policy. If you do it any other way, we will shut you down. Policy. So, and sometimes it's hard when we're talking about ownership. When you don't take ownership of your distinctability and ownership of how you're building your business and your reputation, your assets, and your name, then you come with may. You just let people do what they're going to do. Oh, they're just going to copy. You know what I mean? And the vulnerability of how we are Sometimes it's something that is indoctrinated in our spirit. And that's why we always have to train up ourselves to be like, I am worthy of protection. I am worthy of being distinctive. I am worthy of setting boundaries in business. I am worthy of even telling people, you don't have to like me. I'm not for everybody. I'm not a smorgasbord anyway.
I love that. It's funny how a lot of this always does come back to worthiness, and our ability to actually make decisions from a place of like future focus and hope instead of trauma.
Yes,
Um, because it feels like every time the trauma is at play, like we make bad financial decisions, we make bad
yes,
legal decisions. Like it
yes,
feels like nothing is regenerative because we're just kind of like stuck at the root of the bad thing. Um,
yes,
yeah.
yes,
Yes, received.
yes. That's why we're not supposed to be conformed by the trauma. You know what I mean? Because I came from a trauma space, so I get it. That's why I'm saying yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I got started, I was tiptoeing in stilettos, much like Goldilocks. Is it this? Is it that? Do I sit here, Mother May I, and all this other stuff until
Yeah.
I have a coaching session and someone was like, "You're not the foster kid anymore." And by then I was already a lawyer. By then I was taking over boardrooms, but it was almost like I knew how to compartmentalize it as
Yeah.
opposed to just being who I am. It's the greatest gift that you can give to yourself is to be who you are. And if you
Yeah.
can't be who you are, pretend. That's what I had to do. I had to pretend that I was already the woman of my dreams. And here's
Yeah.
the thing, this is what I know. Your brain doesn't know the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a reminder for me. It's a reminder for me for sure. I feel like I went very far forward and then hit a couple of very just changes. A lot of changes and a lot of changes very rapidly, and it's almost like just not almost like not knowing where you really are in the footing of like all the things. And I think the persona that I existed in before, like, somewhat fell to the wayside, and I'm trying to build a new persona for like right now, right? Because it's just like, I don't know. You're right. The trauma can't come into the room with you, and you have to figure out who you are in those instances. And again, to the point of that book, right? Routine, like routine becomes habit, becomes personality, and you kind of have to build your routine around being able to be that person.
And routine is structure.
And routine is structure. And routine is structure. Yeah. I love structure. Like I actually I love structure because I am undiagnosed ADD, right? I got my son diagnosed, and as I was looking at his stuff, I always kind of laugh about this. It's just like, oh, well, I guess I figured out where it came from. So I am kind of like, I am I need a lot of structure. I need rules. I need scorecards. I need things to be like very straightforward. And it's not to say that I'm not creative or I don't like come up with things in the meantime, but like I always need something after it's created to have like very clear structure and routine and habit energy toward it. So like I think this conversation is interesting, especially around the idea of like governance and bylaws, right? Like, as you're setting up your business, you need bylaws. As you're setting up your life, you need bylaws as well.
Yes, absolutely. With regards to it, I was toying with the governance, governance rules to live by.
Hmm.
With regards to it, probably like because I am a creative. Okay, so with creatives, unless I'm writing a book, those ideas are here today, gone tomorrow. Okay,
Yeah.
when I'm writing a book, I'll put it down, and then it'll come out when it's supposed to manifest or whatever. But
Yeah.
that the same way, like now I'm setting financial governance in play
Mm.
because I realize that without the governance of governing my finances and putting some structure in place and disciplining my dollars, I had a set point that would allow me to only have but so much money. And then some kind of way I would zero it out the money that was saved because, I'm like, oh, I need this. I need another domain. I need another training class, all of the things.
Mm.
And now I'm like, I'm saying the B word,
What's the B word?
budget.
Don't ask it where it went. Tell it where to go.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Because I looked and I was like, you know what? I got too many debtors that is eating from my financial blessings,
Mm.
credits. More, I am indebted to too many people because of what I did yesterday. Now I'm a better person today, but I can't keep on absent-mindedly spending.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, I want a certain amount of money, especially when you get closer to my age in the mid 50s. You're like, I'm not doing this forever. So I
Yeah.
have less ahead of me than behind me. And I've
Yeah.
already seen people who's got me by 10 years and they still working. And I'm in 50s. I'm like, I'm not trying to work every day
Yeah.
for people
Yeah. For people.
unless I want to. So what I do now, I'm, I promise you, when you get to a certain age, when you look at your life and you're like, nah, you start getting a vision and you're going to put structure in place.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love what you said about even having your financial governance in place, and then suddenly everything shifts because like you had a sudden thing, but it doesn't work that way when you're trying to build.
Mm-hmm.
Like that structure is the thing that's going to keep you moving forward, um, toward the goal that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't get to drop the goal because suddenly you have a desire. I was talking to someone about that the other day. She brought me like all her stuff and she's like, I like to build things when I'm anxious. And I'm just like, I think a lot of black women are like that. You either get a degree, get a certification, or you build a thing. Um, and I'm gonna write a blog post about it and I'm gonna call it like the anxious inventor,
Mm,
because like I get it, right? Like it's almost like you don't want to put everything you have into a thing in the
mm-hmm.
event that it like fails or it makes you feel bad due to whatever like previous trauma like you might have around like abandonment or around xyz. But without the structure of continuing forward on a singular thing, you don't ever get to see it if it works or what works at all. And then if you want to pivot or change, um, to continue to grow that thing. But like if it's always the anxiety leading the way and the structure taking the back seat, you never get there.
Right.
Like you never get there. Again, talking to myself, right? Because I know that there are some times when I'm pretty straightforward now. Like I know what I want to do now. Like I've gotten the trademarks. All right. And but I know that there is sometimes the anxiety likes to like pop up and say like, "Oh, okay, like let's get off the routine so that we can feel secure or safe in some kind of way, even though that ain't that." Like,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that
Yeah.
ain't that. Which kind of brings me to the next point of this idea of having like an owner occupied business, right? So like sometimes a founder will sit in the business like so hard that the business can't actually like run without them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if a business is owner occupied, like that's a liability. And like legally speaking, if a business can't really function without the daily presence of the founder, like do they actually own a company, or is it more of like a trademarked expensive mask?
I mean, it's still a business as far as the law is concerned.
Mm,
You trading time for dollars or service for dollars or sweat equity for business equity is still a business.
mm-hmm.
But and it really depends on your intention.
Yeah.
Like I know that my sons will not take ownership of my legal practice. And the likelihood is they will not take ownership of my consulting, my business consulting business, with regards to it. So ultimately, when it gets, I have to either build it up to sell it or build it up to ultimately let it terminate. But I think that statistically speaking, there's over 80% of businesses are solo. We aspire, that's how marketers get a chance to get our money, turn your services into a business, hire, build out the things. And even with regards to AI, or AI with regards to creating some what is it, electronic co-workers or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Certain,
your agentic, your
yeah, your
agents.
agents, yeah. So you're setting those up, but you're still on your own. They don't set up strategy. They can probably do a lot of the busy work to give you some free time, as opposed to cleaning out your mailbox. Maybe you're actually strategizing or meeting with someone. But ultimately, that's always the question. Always with
Mm-hmm.
regards to me, when I started doing self evaluation, then I started to help my clients to evaluate their business.
Mm-hmm.
We already know we're solopreneurs, but how do you make it better if you want to? Like some people don't even want to, you know, because they don't want to spend money. All people
Mm-hmm.
just want money, or they just going to rob from me or whatever. But so I'm like, so do you partner? And if you partner, what does that look like? Because now you
Yeah.
got two solopreneurs working together, ideally servicing. So you're bringing in a bigger pot, and you can help people with different viaticals. You know what I mean? But without a distant service of maybe a person to do client service development, and then another person to do an intake, and another person to do follow up and getting like renewals, or getting, what I mean, with regards to like different people to give you referrals and things of that nature, where you're always continually like, what's next and how do we get reviews, because you can only do but so much.
Mm-hmm.
You can, and if you're also a mom and a wife, and if you get into ministry, and if you're doing some, you can't be in business by yourself all alone without connecting to people. So certain part of your time is going to be spent connecting with other people and being seen and heard and liked and trusted, and all of the things.
Yeah.
And so it's a decision that we have to make. And here's the thing, no decision is a decision.
Yeah. Okay. That part.
Yeah.
Man. Um, man. You said you asked yourself some questions. You said you asked
Mhm.
yourself some questions. What are the questions you asked yourself?
So one of the questions I asked myself was with regards to the business, my business. Well, first, my son asked it of me first a couple years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and that made me shift. And he said, "Mom, if something should happen to you, will I inherit your debt too?" And
Okay.
I'm like, "Absolutely, you would." I was like, "However, I do have insurances, But that also reminded me, I can't be like the carpenter. You ever hear about the carpenter who does everybody else's house
Oh
and
yeah.
home, but his house is shabby? So I
Mm-hmm.
can't be like that person. And instead, I got to be the walking epistle of what to do right with regards to it. So having those conversations, because the cool thing is my son's endeavor. Like one of them is a musician, the other one wants to be a rapper, and I'm like, it's still all a business. So I'm training them up in the way that they should go, but it's also like, okay, how do you make a determination that I didn't have blueprint,
Mm-hmm.
but how do I change that? So I didn't want to be like this one person. If something will happen to this one person, her family is going to inherit 20 different businesses, and at least 13 are empty with debt,
Okay. Okay.
because most of the time that the estates have gotten different. Before it was just a house and maybe an insurance policy that was barely enough to do anything. But
Mm-hmm.
now people are inheriting businesses with SBA loans that can't be paid for. And if you didn't do it right, if you didn't separate your business from your personal, and it looks like that you are, you know what I mean, your business and your personal is alter ego. One just has social security and one has an EIN number, but they're one
Yeah.
and the same because of the pots are the same and the purchases are the same. Then guess what? Eventually it's going to be problematic. So you're setting your family up for a lawsuit as opposed to inheritance of a legacy.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that to be me. And it didn't help that I also was in a car accident. And I got
All right.
I got a couple more months before our statute of limitations is up. But
Okay.
if something would have happened to me,
Yeah.
my my family didn't have my estate planning playbook.
Okay.
They had paperwork, but they don't have, oh, by the way, and here is a couple of clients who need to be apprised of what's going on. And
Mm.
now being a lot more conscientious about things I open up, keeping track of that because a lot of stuff was in my head.
Mm-hmm.
My girlfriend's brother passed away. A lot of stuff was in his head, including the passwords. So even though they inherited a lot of stuff, they couldn't get access to it. Because even
Okay.
with the passwords on the computer or on the phone, you reset that, it just resets all the way back to zero.
Yeah.
So even though I don't like to be deemed as a scrivener, because I really am a business strategist, I'm like, Buzz, if we are going to do a real secure CEO exit plan,
Mm.
where you're securing yourself and your business and your money and everything else, but that exit plan, first you're probably going to exit a job. What does that look like? Then you're going to exit a business. What does that look like? Then you're going to exit with regards to retirement. What does that look like? And then one day, as my grandfather said, baby girl, eventually I got to go back to my maker.
Mm.
What does that look like? And those are conversations. And I'm like, surely I can't be the only one to be having these conversations about what a true exit plan looks like. And it's not just
Yeah.
about that, because there's at least 4 or 5 levels of exits that we need to exit before our final exit.
You named a couple.
Mhm.
What are the 4 or 5 levels like? Just kind of list it out.
Well, I was just thinking career. That's
Yeah.
one. You know what I mean? And sometimes people exit. I'm a former divorce lawyer, so sometimes they exit relationships, with regards to it. In an ideal situation, my Lord told me, don't owe no man. So you should be exiting with regards to the creditors. Eventually,
Yeah.
you got to make that exit statement that I'm not going to keep on giving you. Like if you bring in $10,000, but $9,900 is towards your gas bill, your light bill, and your living expenses, then
Yeah.
later. You know what I mean? And then that ultimately, when you're in at least mid 60s, there is another exit where you're gonna exit from that 9 to 5 hustle altogether. You may not stop altogether, but you ain't gonna be getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work at 9 o'clock or 5 o'clock and you know what I mean, and come home and only get a little piece of your life back. That's
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. I
And
get
then
it. I hear
yeah,
that.
yeah. But
I love that.
that relationship exit, most people are not thinking about that, because
No.
yeah, because
Yeah.
that's that sometimes, and people are now setting boundaries, with regards to it, and they are divorcing families. I know there was a couple of family members I asked the Lord to release the soul tie, and soul ties is not necessarily sexual. I mean,
Hmm.
it can be sexual, but there are some family members who got their grip on side of you, you know what I mean, and they can make or break your day just by shutting off the phone or ignoring you altogether. So it's just certain things with relationships that you got to exit, even though they probably existed almost all of your life. It's just certain things that you need to be able. And for me, CEO, even though I'm a business lawyer, for me, that's chief everything officer. When you find yourself being the chief everything officer of everything, your
Yeah.
business, you the CMO, the CFO, you know what I mean, the COO, you know what I mean, all of the things that
You're
you are
all
the
the
chief
C's.
yeah, you're all of them, chief in your life and in your business.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so chief everything officer, what does that look like? You know, and you can't just be so good for the man or for the old boys network that you're not good for yourself. And people,
Mm,
or sometimes people are so good for the pastor and the bishop, but when it comes to their home, their love language, setting the boundaries for themselves, identifying what their next mission and message movement is. And when they move
yeah,
on the way, what does that look like?
yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, child. All right, that was a lot. But it's definitely in keeping in the conversations we tend to have, so I always appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um, you know. So like what is one structural move a founder can think about, right? If they're really trying to ensure that their business is built to last, like
Yes.
beyond their physical capacity. And even what you're saying, chief everything officer, I mean, that's important to even consider. So I mean, like what is a structural thing that they should be thinking about?
What did Stephen Covey say to us? Start with the end in mind.
Hmm.
And when you start with the end in mind, with regards to, in the end, with regards to what does the end in mind look like? For me, at mid 50s, my end is, it ain't 10 years from now. My end is like on the other side of what does that look like. And I already know I still want to travel. I still need a home in my family hometown, which is 2 hours outside of Philadelphia. You know what I mean? I still want to be able to, you know, do ministry and also do nonprofit work,
Hmm.
and that all needs money.
Yeah.
So obviously, during that time period, I need to build up some money. That's why my prayer is, dear Lord, make me rich, you
Awesome.
know, rich in everything, with regards to it, because money changes things. But even with
Yeah.
regards to the business, having the end in mind, knowing that I do have trademarks. So how do I set it up so good so that when I go to sell, maybe my edutainment business, my legally well, I call it business law edutainment. But what does that look like if I go to sell it?
Hmm.
At least you have the intellectual properties and you have the videos and all of the
Hmm.
things in place, but having that structure in mind, because I have the ending in mind. Most people can barely even think about next weekend.
Yeah.
But my thinking is, when you have a vision of what it looks like, what your next level looks like. Not
Yeah.
when you're hustling, because you know what I mean. Not when you're hustling, not when you are nickel and diming yourself, but when you can be still and know,
Yeah.
and allow your brain to just dream a little bit, because the vision is going to move your mission, and the vision is going to make you seek the provision to build out that vision. So when you
Mhm.
allow yourself to have that type of imagination, then you can write that vision and make it plain, so that you can run with it and you can run towards it and you can build around it. So that's where I always say, if with regards to it, if you can identify what type of business do you want, $100,000 business. I mean, that's
Mm.
not enough money, because once you pay your taxes and you start bringing in people, but it's at least a start. Since when it comes to African American, and we don't just talk about African American women, but
But
on average, they make
uh
less than 40,000. I think that the mean is like 29,000.
yeah.
Even though we tend to know a lot and we tend to be very brilliant with a lot of skills. But when you're addicted to sweat equity and you just want to help people,
Anxious invention. Yep. 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 Yeah. Yeah. I hear that. I hear that a lot. I hear that in myself. I hear that in other people constantly. And it's something that like you said, like there needs to be structure, personal structure around not doing it. Like you have to figure out your own personal governance around like there is a point to stop, there's a point to have a vision and then go for the provision for the vision. I love that. I'm writing it on my wall. Thank you very much. If there was anything that you think I didn't think about in terms of this structure conversation or even this governance conversation, right? Like, what would you want people to really know?
mm-hmm. I mean, it's always interesting because with regards to what people would really know is more for me with regards to having, if you, what I really want them to know is that they're building out something that
Mhm.
ideally would fund their lifestyle, ideally their legacy, their hopes, their dreams, their wants, because it's already there. It's a fully, as we're building out a business, really what we're doing is saying we're fully manifesting the thing that we hope that somebody had given us. And it's
Yeah.
almost like the claiming of our inheritance is pulling out from us what we already know to do. And when you are pulling it out and you're birthing it out and you're being your own financial breakthrough, sometimes
Yeah.
you're not even fully appreciating that, wow, look what you did. That's why it's always good to have maybe milestones and, you know what I mean, and set so that you can set up some stuff and appreciate how far you've come, because most of us did not inherit wealth.
Yeah.
Most of us did not marry into money. Most of us did not even get financial lessons from our family members, our mama or dad.
Mhm.
Most of the stuff that we've learned was caught.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And but when we are starting to be like, but that's not good enough. What we caught and what we were learned as our childhood, that wasn't good enough. So it's something inside of ourselves that
Mhm.
is saying, but there's so much more.
Yeah.
And for me, the shift, the for me, the biggest shift was realizing that everything that I wanted was already in me. It was in me. But if you come from a hard space and trauma, like I did, or brokey broke, as I did, no one's teaching you. Well, what do you have? What's in your
Yeah.
hand? We hear about it even in the Bible and in church and stuff like that, but we never really personified it as our own because we got so indoctrinated to believe that someone else had to validate our value.
Mm.
That's why we keep getting degrees. That's why we keep getting certification. That's why we keep going to the coaching program, hoping to be a facilitator of them so that we can spend thousands of dollars with them so that now we have yet another something.
Mm. Okay.
So I want you to appreciate what I learned, that aha moment for me after law school, after I went through Primerica Financial Services, after I got my master's in taxation, all of that stuff. It was during a networking event. And
Mm.
it was this guy at Temple University. He was also an accountant for Price Waterhouse. And he told me about Osiella McCarty. Osiella McCarty. She was,
Mhm.
and it was just random, but sometimes the random acts to me, it's like God wanted me to know. Girl, Osiella McCarty was a laundry woman who turned her laundry skills into legacy. How? Because she wanted to have an endowment so that girls, African American girls, can have some money so that they can go after their dreams.
Mm.
Now, and that was my aha wake up call. Because before that, I just thought I needed to go to a different law firm, or I needed the pastor to blow into me, or I needed the bishop to say that I'm so awesome in front of thousands of people. And then
Mm.
I realized that it's already inside of me. And when I want more people to realize that business that you're creating, it should not be so disjointed because you're already anointed. When you
All right.
tap into your anointing that you already know deep down on the inside, that you feel as though it's like something that you gave birth to, even if it has to be giving birth to your business and allowing that business to be what you always wanted to present. Set the structure, set the governance, allow yourself to set the boundaries, but appreciate that at the end of the day, you get a chance to be the ambassador of it, because now this is now the full manifestation of your inheritance, your provisions that you are serving. Because people are like, oh, we're called to serve. Yes, but you get a chance to package what you serve, protect what you
Mm.
serve, monetize what you serve. You get a chance to play in a different lane from a place of power,
Mm.
allowing yourself to just protect all of this. You know, all that you bring to the table in business, your strategies, your brilliance, all of that. It's just really a person. You let your business be a personification of the package of everything that you brought to the table. You tend to protect it more, and
Yeah.
and it's not like, oh, this is, my baby. Nah, this is a personification of your strategy. I wrote like
Yeah.
5 books, and I'm writing more books because it's not done. So much like the woman with the oil. And I think one of the busy girls was talking about the oil. This oil is oily over here. But like what the woman with the oil, as long as you have a vessel, as long as you have a vehicle, as long as you have a product or a service, as long as you have something that you can serve to the masses,
Yeah.
then it will continue to flow. That's the
I
thing you
yeah.
protect.
Yeah, I think that's important for a lot of Black women in particular right now to recognize. Um, a lot of the systems are shifting.
Mhm.
I think the count is up to 600,000 who have been released from their positions. Um, and it's not that they are not valuable without something to appreciate.
Mhm.
But they probably haven't tapped into that appreciating skill yet.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
was
real.
looking at that because there was a whistleblower who, I don't know, I'll send you the email because I had to
Please do.
email it to myself. But it was a whistleblower who was saying how she worked for the government and she lost her job with a, but they gave it back to her May 5th. But she was
Mhm.
saying how they had to check because they can't say DEI, they can't say, color, they can't say and like you said, the game has changed. But here's the thing, if we've only been indoctrinated to believe that we can only add value because we're black or we're women, then we've been schooled wrong.
Yeah.
Because it really still is about the strategy. It
Yeah.
still is about, most of the time, we've learned some things. We know some things. People come to us not because we're black or not because we're women, but because of the thing, the anointing with, or the oil is oily. Not
Yeah.
only that, but they come because of our wisdom
Yeah.
and our connectivity, and
Yeah.
how we can tap into the soft skills and we can tap into the business skills. But if the only thing we think that we can bring in, because leadership is still necessary, team building is still necessary, financial planning is still necessary, business organization is still necessary. You don't, if you only think as a black woman, the only thing we bring to the table is diversity. I tell people all the time, to me, DEI was a farce because diversity, equity, inclusion, and you're taught, I never hear about the equitable interests that we get from our sweat labor. Have you?
Not once.
Never.
Not once.
And
No.
equity isn't because you brought a black person to the business, you know? That's
Yeah.
not equity. Equity comes with money.
Equity comes with money. Yeah. That was not what those programs were about at all.
Ever. It was just a check the box. See, we're diverse. But when you start counting the head count, we weren't there anyway.
Yeah.
So it was still a farce. And it was a way to identify, oh, we're going to get rid of the black cards. And I'm like, yeah, we bring more to the table than being black and a woman,
Yeah.
or
Absolutely.
LGBTQIA
Yep.
plus,
Yep.
or incapacitated, or having something in place that is not normal, that can be personally identifiable. But there was
Yeah.
always a colorization,
Oh yeah.
always. And FYI, when I was in law school, I had wrote a research paper with regards to diversity, because once upon a time I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer, until I realized that we weren't winning those cases.
No.
No, the folks from the Old Boys Network, they were winning the cases on reverse discrimination. Okay, the
Huh.
same as what now they're trying to do something, because I saw PayPal recently gave they had a huge settlement with the Trump administration, and I was like, here's the thing, they are running up a very tricky legal slope. If a white guy, because that's what it bows down to, it boils down to, if a white guy, his name is in he's in the hiring framework and he doesn't get hired, and so the assumption is that white is always white, white male is always right. That's a very, very bad legal precedent.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as we can establish, because they want merit base, so bring in the merit, bring in the work, bring in the frameworks, bring in the proof, bring in the
Yep.
annual appraisals, bring in what you brought to the table. You know that requires your own career governance playbook, so that
Mm.
you can establish what you've been doing. Because most people don't remember,
Yeah.
but you need your proof. That's why I used to say, you know what I mean? That certain things, litigation was became trash work for me. Trial work was trash work because most people would go to the lawyer with their scraps because they were never ever being very structured with regards to their asset protection, structured with regards to their decision making, structured with regards to how they did anything.
Mm.
But when you create your own governing playbook, now
Mm.
you've got receipts.
I love that. I
And
love that
then
so
your
much.
children and your children's children get receipts too. Because every aspect of your life, you're now keeping the receipts, you're keeping the documents. So that when it comes down to it, and when you go and see your maker, like my grandfather saw his maker, you can at least have a playbook and conversations that you have let, because your legacy is listening. They're
Mm.
listening to the absence, and they're listening to the assignment on your life with regards to the action steps that you're taking. You get a chance to choose how they're going to learn from you, the actions or the absence.
Ooh. Ooh. I think that is the place to end because if I don't, we will be here for
Right.
another hour.
Again, okay.
Because that's a bar. Yikes. Are they going to be listening for the absence or the action of your assignment? That is a yes. It's
Yes.
going on the wall.
Yes. Okay.
I love it. I love it. Tony, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Again, I'm the brand counselor, helping you go from hustling to wholeness. If you want to ask yourself daily questions about the life that you're building, the business, the brand that you're building, subscribe for daily calibrations. Tony, where can we find you online?
You can find me at the Legal Diva, DIVA or DEEVA. And I'm on social media as the Legal Diva as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, friends, stay intentional and keep flourishing. Bye.